Aside from hanging out in the basement, there really wasn't a whole lot to do in Point Place, Wisconsin during the 70s. Still, the residents have had plenty of adventures that we won't ever forget. Taking place between May 17, 1976 and New Year's Eve of 1979, we saw a lot of development in everyone who hung around in Foreman's basement. And the question is, by the end of the decade, who came out as the most sinister delinquent and who was proven to have a heart of gold? I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is That 70's Show, Good to Evil. First up, for our most good character, we have Red's brother, Marty. An extremely sensitive man, we only see him for one episode after their mother passes away, but he certainly makes an impression. He offers to pay for the funeral, knowing Red is having a hard time financially, and he tries to get Eric to talk about his feelings, after seeing that he got into a bar fight.
Don't worry, it's on me.
He even surprised his grieving brother by setting up the train set for Red, after tricking Red into thinking he was keeping them for himself. What a guy. Next up, our silver medal of good goes to a man of a million feet and a million... well, you know where I'm going with this. Red Foreman. Given how grumpy he is, and the fact that he's often looked at as the antagonist from the perspective of his son and his friends, this might be surprising. But Red is a hard-working father, a man of integrity, and someone who raises Eric in a way that he'll likely appreciate later in life.
Get under there, you're gonna get a spider the size of my foot in your ass.
Now, he is a cynical man and a bit of an unpleasant neighbor, and the fact that he doesn't like to showcase his emotions makes it difficult for the people around him. But he's from another era, and he's been hardened by war. He does everything he can for his family, as well as to teach his children how to survive in the world. Red essentially adopted Hyde, even though he knew that money was tight, and although he doesn't like to show that he cares, it's easy to see that he does.
Why don't you just let it go?
He does tend to coddle his daughter, turning a blind eye to much of her poor behavior, but he does eventually accept that she's an adult who is going to make mistakes. And although it seems like favoritism over Eric early on, it likely stems from Red's belief in teaching him how to be a man through tough love. He stands up for Eric when he's accused of being the reason he had a heart attack and is willing to chew out a waiter when he suggests his wife should make her own salad. He does do everything he can to make the love of his life happy, although usually with complaints. And he tells Eric the importance of respecting Donna on numerous occasions. And let's not forget that scene where Eric leaves for Africa and Red actually says, "I love you."
I'm gonna miss you and I love you and have a good trip.
Regardless of being a stoic, tough guy, that scene really showed his true feelings about his son. After Red is his wife, Kitty. One of the best mothers in this fictional world, she's shown her nurturing personality time and time again. She does everything she can to help and nurture Eric and his group of friends.
I don't know why they don't just put record players in cars.
Although she coddles her son far too much, almost destroying his need for independence. She does decline towards the end of the show. She blames Donna for Eric leaving, and becomes vindictive when she sees Donna with Randy. She does eventually make amends and state that she blames Eric, but took it out on Donna. She did become erratic as the series went on, but it doesn't change the fact that she mothers every kid she welcomes into her home, which is a lot, and it was her idea to let Hyde move in during his time in need. Moving on to Pastor Dave. A man whose life revolves completely around the church, he developed more as the series progressed. He becomes a friend of Red's and is always willing to come help the family when called upon.
Religion can be cool.
He's a huge Packers fan and a passionate clergyman. I suppose his real flaw is that he's also a bit prideful, wanting to be the one in charge of everything at the church. He becomes horribly insulted when Eric is chosen to direct the Christmas play over him, and jumped at the first chance he could to fire him.
As you may know by now, I had to let Eric go.
But still, Pastor Dave is probably one of the most well-meaning characters on the show. Let's quickly mention Charlie Richardson. He had a short time with the rest of the gang, only appearing in a few episodes before meeting his end falling off the water tower. He was the son of an old war buddy of Red's, and really the only bad thing he does, I suppose, is show the guys the warehouse where they proceed to drink their weight in beer. But he was a good kid who was just way too easy to trick. Moving on to Officer Kennedy, Kelso's instructor at the police academy. Although we don't see a lot of him, we learn that he's a lot like Red. He's short-tempered when it comes to his students, especially Kelso. But he does eventually admit that he was only being hard on Kelso to make him take the training seriously.
Did you touch anything?
which you have to give him credit for because who thought it would be a good idea to make Kelso a cop? Next is Rhonda. A former girlfriend of Fez, she can be crude and unladylike but also sweet.
Cocoa Puff!
She's been one of the few girls to really appreciate Fez and wanted to make sure she was the girl he wanted on their date. Then again, she does threaten to punch Jackie and Donna over an M&M.
If I don't get a freaking M&M, I'm gonna start swinging.
Moving on to Joanne, a temporary girlfriend to Bob, almost becoming his wife. She's a strong-willed woman in a time when women were fighting to be respected more by their husbands. An owner of a local dog food factory, she's one of the few to support Donna and Eric's engagement, giving Eric a job when he's fired by Red. She also helps Bob when she comes across him struggling at the supermarket and does try to do what's best for Donna.
Listen, Donna, I'm gonna be honest with you.
She even accepted holding off staying overnight until Donna was more comfortable with their relationship. Next, we have the one-off character, Buddy Morgan. A one-time character who made quite the impression, he was Eric's chemistry partner and quickly warmed up to him in a way Eric wasn't expecting, mistaking Eric's uncertainty about his and Donna's relationship as the other being confused about his sexuality. Very awkward situation, but a good guy. Finally, our first core member of the basement gang, our favorite redhead, Donna. In many ways, Donna is the most trustworthy, level-headed, and compassionate member of the friend group. She's caring and usually owns up to her mistakes, oftentimes without even having to be told.
Well, my work here is done.
We would have liked to have put her higher on the list, but as the series goes on, she does become a bit full of herself and takes out her anger on other people. She tries to control her own father, at one point trying to take away any girly calendars, and even tries to lead a boycott when she finds out Red is giving them out.
I see that calendar. Put it down.
In her defense, she does have some unresolved anger at her parents over putting her in the middle of their fighting, and she did get embarrassed at the way her dad ran Bargain Bob's. And she fights with Kitty a lot towards the end of the series, despite the woman being something of a second mother to her. That said, she is a teenager / young adult throughout the show and is simply struggling to deal with the problems that come from that period of life. Now we go to our favorite burnout of the series, Leo. Surprisingly a veteran and a sort of father figure to Steven, he has his moments when he tries to steer the gang in the right direction.
Yeah, it's like we crossed into some different dimension.
He tries to convince Red not to kick Hyde out, but takes the precaution of letting Hyde stay at the photo hut. He's broken the law a few times, peddling concert tickets and weed, but he's totally harmless. His less than on-the-ball mentality leads to him hitting on Kitty right in front of Red and leaves town without much of a goodbye. With all that said, Leo may not be smart and he may be totally burnt out, but he is a kind soul. He's good-natured, and although you can't usually rely on him, he only really spreads positive energy. He also apparently rescued an entire platoon from the Germans when he was serving in the military, so we're giving him big points for that. But that was presumably before Leo started indulging in drugs, because there's no way that he'd be capable of that in the state of mind he's always in on the show.
I don't see anything.
Yeah, it's more of an emotional scar.
Next is the youngest of the Foreman family, Eric. Lanky and sarcastic, he's known for being the guy in the group who bails everyone else out of trouble. Additionally, Red doesn't give him enough credit for his backbone.
Yeah, wicked dangerous.
Eric is a character who has quite a bit of integrity. He also shows way more compassion than most of his friends, specifically Kelso and Hyde. He's a bit susceptible to peer pressure, as he does what he can to impress Donna, including skipping class and getting a tattoo, and even helps break onto a property just to have a party.
You have to stop trying to look so hot when you come over.
He ditched out on Donna and their wedding, but he did genuinely believe that it was for the best. And while he was hated for accepting the opportunity to go to Africa before talking it over with his family and fiance, he stated he thought he was doing what was best for his future. He complains a lot when he and Donna are split up, even starting a petty fight over their friends. But he did step back when he saw Donna was hurt by being dumped.
We just hang out together and pretend everything's fine.
He is shown to be okay with manipulating girls to like him, using being dumped and being in the school paper. But he also shows loyalty, even to his sister Laurie, when their father discovered her lifestyle, making a defense of her by saying that it was the 70's and at least she wasn't a prostitute. And it's hard to rank him any lower when he stayed behind from college to support his family. Next is the mother of Kelso's baby, Brooke. She does lie at first about being with Kelso and almost refuses to let him have a part in raising their child,
I just don't think you understand what it means to have a baby.
but eventually she comes around and introduces Michael to her mother, willing to be a team and learn how to make things work. She does get frustrated about not doing well in their parenting classes at first, but she is patient with Kelso and gently reprimands him when he says something ridiculous. Moving on to Randy. There are a lot of conflicting views on Randy's character. Some like him, and some found him to be an unnecessary replacement. Well, to be honest, most people didn't like him. But it doesn't change the fact that he is a good guy with a good heart.
Dude, you are scarily optimistic.
He doesn't try to pressure Donna into a relationship and does his best to help people. He's the first to donate to the children's library and help to convert Eric's old room into an office for Kitty. He even invites Donna into his home when she insists she doesn't want to move to Florida with her dad. He does make a show of being rejected when Donna turns him down, but it's quickly exposed as an act, with him gracefully accepting that he and Donna are done.
Donna and I are just friends, and I blow dry this hair upside down.
But we'll dock him just a little bit because he is no replacement for Eric. Sorry, Randy. Susie Simpson is next. A passion for taking down criminals and eating plenty of candy, pun intended. She does become very aggressive about her attraction to Kelso, but she sets it aside to help him make amends with Fez.
I think he did it because he knows that as a cop, I like to spill blood.
She may not have been a long-running character, but she did make a good impression. Bert, Kitty's father, is up next. He's a very relaxed and passive man. Unlike Kitty's mother, he always makes sure to tell Kitty she's loved and cared for.
I love you, Pumpkin.
He makes a few bad choices, like buying an ostrich farm, but he does what he can.
I bought an ostrich farm.
He rolls over to his wife's comments and demands, though, and that isn't something that's turned out well for his two daughters. He also makes an inappropriate comment about Fez, asking when the family got a houseboy, but by that point, I'm sure Fez was already used to inappropriate comments from Red. And that wraps up the good characters. We now enter the gray area. Next is William Bennett, also known mainly as WB. He's Hyde's biological father, a CEO of a chain of record stores. He shows excitement getting to know Steven. He does initially think that Hyde reached out only for the money, but quickly has his mind changed.
I can give you money if that's what you're after.
He offers his son a job and gives him the last record store to help give Steven a future. Though he does sell out his company to a bunch of dry cleaners, sending out a letter to all of his employees that they are now fired, which is pretty awful. That said, he stands by his children and supports them as best as he can. Next is the queen of the DMV, Nina. No nonsense and driven, she can be stiff and cold to people. Although her hatred for puns doesn't make her malicious, she doesn't do well keeping her personal and work life separate, letting it become an inconvenience to the customers that come into the DMV.
I'm gonna have to ask you to stop making puns now.
She also dates Fez only to dump him when his clinginess is too much, and then tries to take him back thinking he changed his personality entirely.
I'm starting to feel like I need some space.
We aren't saying Fez can't be too much, but wanting someone to completely change how they act just to please you, that's not the formula for a happy life for anyone involved. She rejects how racist her parents are towards Fez and insists on being intimate in their bed to get back at them, which shows both integrity and pettiness depending on how you look at it.
Oh, you can't be her boyfriend.
Why not?
Because you're... what's the word, honey?
Next is our foreign exchange student from the country of, we don't know, Fez. Sometimes the sweetest guy on the planet, sometimes the creepiest. Well, usually the creepiest.
Make that sound, whore.
He gains more development the more the series goes on, trying to improve himself even up to the last episode. He hides candy in every conceivable place, is easily tricked by people, and does whatever he can to impress the ladies, which usually just backfires and ends up being creepy. While he does hide in closets to spy on Donna and do other inappropriate things, he also does try his best to do the right thing in most other non-creepy situations.
Looks like I'm just in time for makeup sex.
Fez is loyal to his friends, far more so than Hyde and Kelso, and he does have his sweet moments from time to time. He marries Laurie to stay in the US, tricking the government, but considering the fact that being married to Laurie was punishment enough, we can let that slide. Finally, we have the infamous Michael Kelso. Without a doubt the lowest IQ in the friend group, he's known for gluing himself to things around the house, bragging about his looks, and shouting burn. He's cheated on Jackie multiple times throughout the show, even dating Laurie and Jackie at the same time. Kelso can be disloyal at other times as well, specifically making fun of Eric, but it's hard to fault him too much because he's clearly so stupid that he doesn't fully understand the ramifications of his actions. Granted, he's a young guy and has made a lot of selfish decisions, but he does eventually try to step up and be a good father. He also tries to take his life in a more serious direction, training for the police academy and working in a hotel kitchen.
Damn, I always wanted to put a dog in handcuffs.
He does compete for Jackie's attention after leaving her to run away to California and uses Annette to make his ex jealous. But he also tries to warn Eric about Casey. He does straighten himself up a bit by the end of the show, even though he's still a big goof. Hotel manager Roy is next. Another guy who tends to come off as way too needy. He's a people pleaser who is easily tricked and taken advantage of.
That's okay, I probably deserved it.
He avoids any sort of confrontation and is always eager to be included in the fun. Standing in a shower waiting to be noticed isn't something people typically do. But this guy has had it pretty rough and is clearly going through some stuff, so we'll cut him some slack. Next up is Earl. He has absolutely no work ethic aside from making homemade Christmas cards and takes it out on everyone else. He's not an awful person, but he is vindictive to Red after he's fired, even taking him to court for wrongful termination.
Earl, you're fired.
He then later guilts Red when he's fired over a complaint. He even resorts to going to Red's home to yell at him in person, but at least he's kind to Kitty. Next is Timmy. He doesn't do much in the show except be the typical annoying high schooler you never want to run into outside of class. He gets attention by being pantsless at parties and announcing whenever someone else does something even remotely embarrassing, such as going out to lunch with their mom or mooning in the school yearbook. Next we have Angie, WB's daughter. She is immediately displeased to find out about Hyde. An accomplished math major raised to take over her father's company, she has a weird energy to her.
I'm a math major.
She's a perfectionist that is easily annoyed by anyone doing what she considers to be inferior.
Stop laughing at me. I am not a stripper, I am a math major.
She almost has a panic attack over not having crates ordered, and tries to get Steven fired after hearing that he sneaks out from work to go to bars. She claims that she wants to date Kelso because he's the first guy she could relax and laugh with.
I never relax and laugh. And with Michael, that's all we do.
But usually when she brings him up, she just talks about how good looking she finds him to be. Next we have Annette, Kelso's fling from California. She starts as just being a sort of gag character, playing the dumb blonde. First meeting her, it's easy to feel kinda bad for her. Kelso is clearly trying to use her before they go back to Wisconsin.
I mean, you're blonde, you're beautiful.
However, once she shows back up, she is loud, insufferable, and demanding with a hatred of all things that bounce.
Well, be sensitive to me because I'm upset too.
She fights Jackie, finding her to be a threat, and has no problem attacking Donna for being a redhead. Her saving grace is that she does recognize that Kelso still has feelings for Jackie and left on her own accord back to California. Hyde's short-time wife, Samantha, is next. She makes an effort to blend into life in the Foreman house at first. She tends to be more revealing than the family is prepared for and suggests helping Kitty spice up her romantic life by showing her some dance moves. She later reveals that she has no issue with being a pest, using fighting to make her and Hyde's intimacy more passionate and being exposed as to already being married.
He told me some other things he liked, but I said, hey, I'm a stripper, not a contortionist.
The iconic Jackie Burkhart is next. Known to be an almost unstoppable force of demands and ridicule, she does have her moments when she shows how much she's learned over the years.
I never thought I'd say this, but there comes a point when a person is too tan.
She's controlling of every environment and every relationship that she's in. On top of that, she's arrogant and refuses to be seen as lesser than anyone else. She gets extremely defensive when invited to stay with Donna after her father is arrested, twisting the situation so Donna has to beg for her company. She belittles Kelso as they're dating and thinks true romance is your boyfriend remembering everything that you've said. She strings both Hyde and Kelso along for her amusement and is only able to see Fez as her ideal guy after they room together. She does convince her mom to give Bob a chance and tries to cheer the man up with Donna when Joanne leaves him. She has her moments, however, revealing a lot of good deep down beneath all of her mean girl exterior. Moving on to Bob. This may cause some conflict, but we do have our reasoning for placing him this low. He does his best as a father, as we've seen from his interactions with Donna. He makes it clear he doesn't mind being seen as a goof of a businessman as long as he's successful enough to send her to school. He's extremely protective of her, responding as many dads of the time would, over her dating or being on birth control. However, he was an awful husband. He didn't realize how serious things were when Midge said that she was unhappy, scoffing at her running a business and trying to forbid her from taking classes or going to counseling. He brags about his success whenever he can and pretty much just harasses Red whenever he's around. He's so much of an annoyance, he sets off Red's heart monitor a few times. But he's also been sympathetic, giving Red a job when the man hits hard times and calling Midge to get her old wedding dress for Donna to use. Next, after Bob, is his wife Midge, the hot mom next door character and about as smart as Kelso. She's ranked lower than Bob due to her being far more aggressive when putting Donna in the middle of their failing marriage.
Your stupid father never listens.
She openly calls Bob an ass whenever she can and doesn't care about making her daughter uncomfortable or making a situation more tense than needed, showing up to fight Pam over Bob's attention. She does admit to being in the wrong, regretting not forgiving Bob and leaving him, but at least she was there offering Donna a place to stay in California and even coming back to help cheer her up. Next is the frequently mentioned, rarely seen Pam Macy. Another one of the many ditzy blonde tropes on the show, she has no problem pursuing anyone regardless of whether they're in a relationship or not. She's also delighted to expose the fact that Kelso couldn't perform. Next is Fenton, a rival to Fez, an annoyance to Eric, and a friend of Jackie's. He prides himself on being a classy guy, but comes off as super pretentious.
I'd shake your hand, but I'm afraid I catch some kind of third world herpes.
He uses his role as a landlord to make Fez miserable over a dispute on pants, and is often seen getting way too worked up over similarly petty arguments. Though he is quick to diffuse and go back to being polite. He's had various jobs on the show, wearing the merchandise more than he sells it. The only reason he even cuts Fez a break later on is because of his new friendship with Jackie. He judges and uses people, making comments about Jackie being an upgrade from Donna, and even drops that he had a sugar daddy at one point.
Putting me in quite a bind, and not in a good way.
And that's it for the gray area. Now we move into the worst of the worst, starting with the bad and ending with the most evil. Next is Kitty's mother, Bea. As much as we love the infamous Betty White, her character on the show is actually very loud and very rude, even to her own family.
It doesn't matter because it's not nice to talk about.
We do see a small moment of vulnerability when she's found crying after Bert's funeral, but typically when she's on screen, she's passive-aggressive and refuses to admit weakness. Kitty's sister Paulina is next. Not always a success, she comes to visit Kitty only to rub in how much better she is now, with stories about the Indy 500 and being a top salesperson. She tells as much as she can to make Kitty, who's currently not working, feel inadequate.
Only the top Kathy May salesperson gets one of these, baby.
It's normal to have sibling rivalry, but to be so consumed by it that it dominates your personality is another thing entirely. Also, was she talking about being involved in a cult?
But there were some fun parties.
Mitch is next on our list, and like most roles played by Seth Green, the guy is a mess of weirdness. He's a rival to Eric, competing for Donna's attention and paying her compliments even though she's taken.
I'd have to say that this omelet has the prettiest red hair I've ever seen.
He thrives on Eric not being able to have relations with his fiancée and finds ways to make Eric's life more difficult, winning over his friends, guilting Eric into hanging out, and bringing up the girl who sells Slurpees. He embarrasses Donna at a wedding, saying she's his fiancée, and tries to mock Eric after bribing the young foreman not to fight.
Start the car, Mom! Start the car!
Next is Fez's ex, the woman of a million personalities, Caroline.
Your cocoa brown skin makes me hot.
Obsessive, over the top, and completely out of control, she claims she loves Fez but attacks him. She makes people uncomfortable with her threats of cutting out tongues and ripping out eyes. We can commend her for getting help, but it doesn't seem like it had much effect. We're happy she stopped making herself pass out, but she has a long way to go. Finally, we get to the rebel and conspiracy theorist of the gang, Stephen Hyde. There's no denying that Hyde has had a rough upbringing. He was neglected for years by his mother, and Bud, who he had been raised to think was his father, bailed on him.
I remember when I was a kid, I didn't even have a father.
As a result, he wound up jaded and untrusting of everyone. Early on, Hyde hits on Eric's girlfriend Donna, despite the fact that the two are supposedly best friends. When he's taken in by the Foremans, he tries to do better in school to make them proud, picks up extra chores around the house as thanks for taking care of him, and even starts working when he sees them struggling. But the more the show continued, the more his past was getting to him. He lied about his relationship with Jackie until they're actually caught, and then proceeded to cheat on her when he thinks she's too close to Michael. He tricks Kelso into thinking he actually got shot, milking as much guilt as he can, and then takes the chance to shoot Kelso in the rear. But in all seriousness, upon second viewing of the show, Hyde is nowhere near as cool as we thought he was when we watched when we were younger.
Kelso, the last time you said that, we had to get your stomach pumped.
He's incredibly disloyal, routinely taking joy in and expressing his joy whenever something bad happens to a friend, whether it's them getting hurt, getting in trouble, or having their relationship ruined. And his attempts to make a move on Donna early on, whenever things aren't going great between her and his supposed best friend, is actually pretty pathetic. He does do good occasionally, like taking a fall for Jackie when she's caught with weed, but it hardly makes up for his overall character flaws. Jack, Jackie's father, is next. We don't know too much about him, but what we have seen and heard is not flattering. He's a corrupt politician who is arrested for bribery, and a poor father who lets his daughter get away with anything. And he's also a horrible employer known to be cruel to his staff.
But Mom, Dad's in trouble.
Beatrice, better known as Grandma or Mother Foreman, is next on the list. Spiteful and cruel, she does whatever is necessary to make Kitty miserable.
And he makes more money, a lot more money than you.
She's revealed to have some racist views and makes it so her own pride and joy son doesn't want to speak with her.
Dear God, what's with all the Polacks?
She guilts everyone about everything and spends all her time and energy on causing tension, even getting up in the early hours of the morning to call Kitty about the Thanksgiving meal. She dies when confronted by Eric, and the only episode we see her be pleasant is when Fez spends hours rubbing her feet. Next up we have Casey Kelso, Michael's older brother and Donna's short-time boyfriend. He's a womanizer and a tormentor of the underdog.
So you ready to roll?
He lies to Donna about how he feels for her and then dumps her in front of her friends and family without a second thought. And it's not from the stupid gene that his brother Michael clearly carries. He's shown through his interaction with Eric that he knows exactly what he's doing.
Hey, foreplay, is that you?
The last of the Foreman family, Laurie, is next. Eric often calls her the devil, and we can see why. Sibling rivalry is one thing, but Laurie takes it to another level, pursuing any man she can use to relieve her boredom or get something out of it. She's eventually exposed as the type of person she is. She thrives on tormenting Eric, and with the exception of a couple times that are played off as a joke, she seems to be totally void of emotions.
Burst into flames! Burst into flames! Burst into flames!
Her manipulation of people, including her father, as well as the many men she's with, mixed with her total lack of feelings, suggests that she might border on sociopathy. Next we have the sweet host of Good Morning Wisconsin, Christine St. George. She's a hero to Jackie, so that should say enough about what kind of person this woman is.
Spectacular!
A ruthless celebrity, she strives for perfection on her show and does anything she can for a good rating. She makes the lives of her staff hell, making ridiculous demands and pitching a fit until she gets her way. Moving on to Jackie's mother, Pam. A neglectful woman, she opts to run to Mexico for a vacation rather than to help her daughter once Jack is arrested. She uses Bob once she finds out he has money, and was ready to drop him in a heartbeat for a car salesman. Our silver medal for evil goes to Hyde's once believed father, Bud. Now, some would argue that Bud shouldn't be this low on the list, mainly because he supposedly isn't Hyde's biological father, and was presumably tricked into thinking so.
Well, that's what his mother says.
But if he genuinely thought that he was Hyde's father and still ditched him the way that he did, it still speaks volumes of his immorality. He also had no shame in taking money from Hyde and admitted to just wanting to be a friend rather than a father figure. Red did try to straighten him out, but clearly it was short-lived when he ran away with Edna. Speaking of, the honor or dishonor of the gold medal of evil goes to Miss Gross Edna. Not only does she neglect the health and safety of her own son, but all the children.
No, I look great. I kept my weight down by smoking.
She feeds the kids of Point Place High School spoiled meat, trash, and takes no pride in her work. She screams at Hyde that he looks ridiculous and will be mocked by everyone. She smoked while pregnant, and she abandoned her son for a fling and then leaves him again to run away with Bud. Her neglect led to her son turning into a distrustful man who torments people because it's all he ever knew growing up. And although it clearly didn't work out to her advantage, After Hyde was born, she lied about the paternity. She's negligent to the point that it would actually be considered abusive. And for that reason, she takes the place as the most disgraceful member of the cast. But what do you think? Who do you think is the most evil character in that 70s show? Who's the most good? Don't forget to binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters from your favorite shows, movies, and video games.